in A Course in Miracles, it teaches us that there are actually two thought systems in our mind. It teaches us that there is the ego thought system and the Holy Spirit's thought system. And very simplified, it teaches us that the ego's thought system is a thought system of fear, and the Holy Spirit's thought system is a thought system of love. So I'm not sure if you read my blog that I sent out a few weeks ago, but the idea with the blog was, it was called Seriously, What Was I Thinking? And I talked about when I was in school for life coaching and wellness counseling, and we went into a theme of mental wellness. And we simply just did an exercise where we were asked to observe and witness our thoughts. And it was the first time that I ever stepped back from my thinking, that I ever really kind of, a part of myself separated from my thinking, and I observed and saw and witnessed the thoughts moving through the mind. And what I witnessed to, I was shocked and kind of appalled at, because the thoughts were fearful, chaotic, going in a million different directions, unfounded, futuristic, in the past. They were just all over the place. And I had an insight in that moment that all of my problems were rooted in this issue in my mind. Like, I just, and sometimes you intuitively have a knowing about something. Like, I really just saw that that was the problem. So on some level, I vowed to heal my mind. This was nothing to do with spirituality. This was just to do with like healing, really, and just seeing that that was the problem. So on some level, I asked for help, and it was that vow. I remember, like, I am going to figure out how to heal my mind. That's the problem. I see it. And I didn't know how I was going to do that. The other thing that I did, and I kind of shared, was I asked everyone around me if they were having the same issue. Like, is your mind full of chaotic thoughts? This is not something I'd ever discussed with anyone. And every single person I spoke with said yes. And again, I was like taken aback by the fact that how did I go all these years without noticing this or having a conversation? Or why aren't we talking about this? Well, we were starting to talk about it, right? I was in a space where we were acknowledging it, but up until that point, I had no idea. So fast forwarding when A Course in Miracles showed up in my life, and it's like, again, there was another insight, and the insight was, this is the answer that you've been asking for around healing your mind. And I had no idea that it was going to come in the form of a spiritual solution. In my blog, I think I said, like, I didn't expect God to show up as the answer. And I mean, I really, really didn't. It would probably be the furthest thing from my thought. But again, there was clues that happened when I opened the course. Sometimes people, kind of shut down when they read the line about like A Course in Miracles being a mind training. But to me, I was like, oh my gosh, like this, like my mind is so untrained, like it needs training, like it needs a lot of help. So that was like a sign. And the other thing that it did is it started to describe the ego thought system. And it was describing the condition of my mind, the state of mind that I had witnessed to and started to observe. So I was on track. I was definitely on track with the answer that had come. And so I want to talk a little bit about this because there's a lot of people that are still not aware of aware of the idea that there are actually two thought systems in the mind. Like they're just aware of their thinking, and they're entangled in their thinking and identified with their thinking. They are their thinking is them. And so I just want to acknowledge that this is one of the greatest insights that has come across my awareness in my lifetime. The fact that I have been taught and become aware that there are actually two thought systems in the mind, and that ultimately I have a choice between them. Prior to not having that, I was just caught up in my mind. I was just really kind of trapped in the loop. I didn't have a key to escape. I didn't know how. I didn't know there was even a problem. So the other thing about us talking about this tonight is about exposing the ego. And what I want to say is the ego hides in plain view. Like, how did I go 21 years without noticing it, without seeing it? Like, it's like it was a secret I didn't know about. That's how I felt. I felt like it was a secret that I didn't know about. And then when I saw it and I knew about it and it was exposed, it was something that I couldn't undo from knowing. Like, I couldn't ignore it because it was such an important thing to awaken to, right? Like, when you start to see the state of mind, the ego state of mind, you recognize that something must be done. It is the beginnings of us waking. It is the beginning of that. So that's, I just want to just acknowledge that we're having this conversation, and maybe you know about the two thought systems already. Some of you, of course, are like, have been studying the course with me. Maybe this is a new idea. What I want to say is, if nothing else from this class that you take away, is that this is transformative in terms of your understanding of your mind. And it's the best news to be able to actually, when you can see the ego, we have a choice to start to undo from that. So the other thing that the course teaches about the ego is that it's not based on anything real. Like, it's not rooted in reality. So the thought system of fear can actually be undone and healed from. It will dissolve, disappear. It teaches us that the only thing that's real is love. And so I want you to know that we never have to be afraid of losing the love. We never have to be afraid of even losing our real thoughts. They can be out of our awareness. They can be seemingly hidden, but they're eternal, and they're for us, and they are ours. So we face the ego on this journey and undo and heal the mind in that way. And what gets ultimately exposed is actually the love that's underneath it all, right? So first we have to look at the ego, the layer, but then ultimately the love starts to express through. And it's there all along. It's there now. But without dealing with the ego thought system, we don't really have access to it in a way that we can. So let's just do a little exercise. Like, I don't know if this is simple, right? Like, I don't know in the last time you've done this, even if you have like paper and pen, but it's okay if you don't. Like, I think it would be like interesting for us to just close our eyes and just notice our thoughts. Just close our eyes and decide we're going to watch our mind. So I'll just direct you. And if you have paper and pen, you can write down the thoughts that are coming to mind. If not, that's okay. Okay, welcome, Robin. So we're just doing a little exercise here. So everyone, just rest your eyes closed for a moment. And we are invited to see our mind as a screen, like a big movie screen. And all we want to do is watch our thoughts rise up. They can come onto the screen and then just let them go. Just notice what you're thinking and what thoughts flow through. But don't hold on to them. Just go ahead and do that for a minute or so. Okay, and slowly just open your eyes when you're ready. So, over time, as students of the course, we get very practiced at looking at the contents of our mind. What are we thinking? What thoughts are going through our mind? Even the idea of tracing back to a thought that then triggered a reaction. Okay. So I want you to think about a thought. And a thought is just a thought until we add the power of our mind's belief to it. Okay. So a thought is just a thought, it's kind of neutralized. But what gives it power is us believing in it. Okay, so the reason that we have an issue with the ego is because we have infused our belief in the ego. That's like at the root. We believe in it, we trust it, we listen to it, we're wound into it. And what comes along with that is that the ego then separates into all these thoughts, and we infuse our belief into all kinds of things of the world. And belief gives it power. And so what we believe, we perceive in the world. And the ego being a thought system, and a thought system that's running in our mind a lot. I mean, before we heal, it's basically the only thing running in the mind. We are perceiving a fearful world. Right? We're perceiving a world of separation. We're perceiving a world of judgment. So one of the things around A Course in Miracles is it teaches us the power of our mind. And in a sense, we have depreciated the power of our mind. In this world, we feel victimized, we feel powerless, we feel helpless. And the Course is actually waking us up to say, actually, it's the power of your belief, the power of the focus that you're giving it, that is dictating the experience you're having. And in a way, if we go back to that moment when I saw all the thoughts in my mind, one of the things that came along with that is a level of accountability that's going on in my mind, that those thoughts are happening in my mind. And that's another really important thing as we're exposing the ego, is that we take accountability for our state of mind. In the Course, it says, it is this we have done, and it is this we can undo. It says, it is this we have believed in, infused our focus on, and it is this we can unwind from. So it's so important. It's actually scary for us to embrace the power of our mind, but it's actually the most empowering thing that we can do, because it gives us a choice to heal. So any thoughts, you can unmute and put up your hand. Anything you notice when you witness your mind? Anything you noticed when you just stopped and looked at your thoughts? And you can just unmute and share if there was something that you noticed.
I judged a thought as trivial right away.
Yes.
And my thoughts were all over the place.
Yes. Yes.
I was surprised that my thoughts were not all over the place.
Okay.
But my mind is a lot quieter since doing this work.
Yes. Yeah.
I got that same thing, Cindy, and I noticed that any little environmental distraction and my ego would grab right onto that and try to take me off into judging or really just needing to distract me and point me in a different direction.
Yes. Yeah, that's really helpful in terms of distraction.
I noticed how I'd have like one thought, and then that would remind me of another thought and another thought. It kind of was like this whole little train that was starting. It's like, what? It was actually pretty funny once I was done with it. It was like,
Yeah, that's actually that's a good awareness. Sometimes I call that, and on a bad day, that I call that spiraling into the dark hole, especially if it starts at at a really fearful thought, and then we spiral. It can go super quick in terms of things looking dismal. So that's interesting that you saw the train of them. Yeah. What else?
Well, one of the favorite ways that my mind likes to get going, or the ego comes in, is to give me something I have to do.
Oh.
It's one of its favorite ways to kind of catch me, to do. And yeah, but with the training that I've done through the course, it's quite easy for me to let that just float away. Mm-hmm. Instead of grabbing on. I mean, sometimes I do, but it doesn't grab like it used to. So I find it more amusing than anything else. Like, it's like, oh yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you. Go
right that. Yes, I think that's part of the path, is that we develop a sense of humor around the ego, and we can, because it's not rooted in anything real. And so there is a level of humor that does come in to help us detach from the judgments and the thoughts and the harshness, because a fearful thought system is very harsh.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that I was experiencing kind of a blank-mindedness for part of it, and then I was having thoughts about, oh, why don't I have very many thoughts? Oh wait, I do have thoughts. These are thoughts. And then I started having thoughts about reporting what my thoughts were. So I was like, oh, I could say this, and then I could say that, and it's like, oh, I know that thing. I know the like the reporter or the teacher is sort of like coming in, but those thoughts were kind of harder to become aware of. It's like, okay, I it's a thought, but like, it's not on the screen. It's like I'm still identified with it. So yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a sneaky thought. It was hiding in the background.
I would say mine were very harsh, like you mentioned, Lisa, just like a really negative tone. And I've sort of been just casually doing the Course in Miracles for about 2 years. And there's still kind of like this doubtful voice in my head that's like, this is dumb. This is like, you're just searching for like something to heal you and it's not gonna work. And so yeah.
Oh yeah, I like that one. That one's familiar to me. Whenever the doubt thoughts would come in about A Course in Miracles in my early days, my ego always said, this is just bullshit. This is just spiritual crap. That, oh my God, it was, so there's a lot the doubt thoughts that come in. So yes, I can relate to that for sure. And just and kind of the tone you're speaking to, right? Just the negative, kind of the negative dismal tone. Yeah, that's very common. What about you, Richard? Did you have some awareness come in?
Well, I felt like just before coming on the call, I was dealing with kind of online paperwork stuff. And that usually frustrates the hell out of me because there's so many little details and then this doesn't work. And then you got to go back. And then I spent like an hour and a half doing stuff that I just felt should have taken 10 minutes, and it never takes 10 minutes. It always takes an hour and a half or 2 hours. And so I was in the judgment already an hour ago. This experience was basically just sitting in the feelings.
Yes.
And
Okay.
actually,
I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that. You hold on to that. Don't go there yet. Yeah, that's important.
So there weren't any cognitive judgments.
Okay.
Because I was just breathing through the big feelings that were there.
Right. Yes.
Right. Just staying present with it and just watching and, and yeah, actually in a way, my mind was somewhat blank. It was really, because I was focused on just being with the feelings that were there.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. So it's all connected. So it's all connected. So our thoughts, we have these thoughts, these judgment thoughts, and then when we're believing them, when we're identifying with them, we have the feelings that follow, right? And so sometimes one of the ways we identify ourselves caught in the ego is simply by how we feel. That's a great. You don't always have to have a clear thought to trace it back to. Sometimes it's just how we feel. Yeah. Marietta, welcome.
Hi.
Hi. Did you do the exercise?
Yeah, well, I was surprised. I was standing when you started to say it. So I sat down in whatever was close by, which was not anything very comfortable. And I was really surprised that my first thought was my spine felt great. Like I could feel my whole spine and it felt wonderful. And it was just a surprise. And then I did that thing Chaz was saying where I started to prepare what I was going to say at the end of the meditation. It's like, and I had some other thoughts rolling around, and then I had something come through quick as a flash. I almost didn't even know I thought it, but I thought, oh, I'm doing this wrong. And it's like it came in and out and was gone. And I had to back up and go, what was that again? It felt kind of uncomfortable. And it was that I was sitting and closing my eyes wrong. So, yeah.
Yeah.
My head was pretty busy. Yeah, I can't even remember everything I thought.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. You did it perfect. Isn't this great? We're like, what's all the chaos going on in the mind? I mean, how can we get that wrong? It's like, it's messy. It's like, even the idea, like we can come and say, I don't remember what the thoughts were. It just felt, it just felt a certain way. It just felt intense, or it felt stressful. So this is really important. We just did that for a minute. Okay, let's just talk about that for a second. We did that for a minute, and look what was going on. Look at the thoughts that were just rising up in the mind in that short time. We share the ego thought system. It's great. When you undo the ego, you're actually undoing the ego, the one ego. Like we all have our part to play in the undoing. And although it plays out with kind of different strategies and sometimes different tones of voice, it's really the same ego. The ego is the ego is the ego, and it's false, it's false, it's false. So it has like all the ways it interplays, all the ways it seems to express itself. And we are like stepping into this space where we say, and it's actually possible to heal this. Like it's actually, A Course in Miracles comes as like a guiding light, like a key to that locked door that says, you do not have to be caught in this thought system anymore. Like there is actually a way out. But you cannot heal the problem of the ego with the ego. You cannot heal the problem of the ego with the ego. This is why there's a spiritual solution that's required. If we think simply, the ego is like the lower mind, the spiritual aspect or the Holy Spirit is the higher mind. Or we could say the ego is the wrong mind and the Holy Spirit is the right mind. We can't heal the problem. The ego, so this is very important because the loop that we're caught in with the ego thought system is that the ego attempts to heal itself. And the dictate of the ego is seek and do not find, seek for love and never find it, seek for the answer and never find it. So that's kind of related to your doubt thought, Ashley, is like, oh, just going down another pathway here, probably not going to work. And you're not that far off, to be honest, because the ego will not run out of pathways to guide us down and say, yeah, I know what the answer is. And it's looking externally for the answer. And we get excited, we get excited. Oh, okay, I got my next thing I'm going to try. Then we get disappointed because it didn't work quite well. I was onto this early. Like I was kind of in the big picture of life. I was very rule following. So I was like, okay, the world, my parents, my community, they say, go to university, did that, check. Then they say, get a government job that's very secure, check. Get married, have a couple kids, check, buy a house, check. I mean, I was like checking the boxes early, like I was in my early 20s, just like doing all the things. Every time I would complete something, come to the end of a goal, gone down a pathway, this is what I'm told, this is my route to happiness. The ego would say to me, not knowing it was the ego until later when I started to be aware, it would say, well, this is almost it, but, and then the next like goal had to be set. And the next, it was never fulfilled. It was never satisfied. It was never complete or healed. And that's the nature of the ego. The ego it can't be whole and complete. It's separate. It will never have the answer. So I have such good news for us all. I just want to say that. Okay, so we're going to go into a couple things more. I really want to examine the ego and expose the ego a lot today because I want us to be like aware of all the ways in which it shows up because it's so sneaky. But what I want to say to you at the end of the day is that the forgiveness that A Course in Miracles teaches, not your conventional forgiveness, but the forgiveness that A Course in Miracles teaches, it isn't about sorting out the ego. It isn't about solving the ego's problems the way the ego thinks they need to be solved. It's not about that. It's like you don't need those answers. That's not actually, it's good news. I just want to say that because the idea of trying to heal that crazy mind is crazy making. I mean, where do we even begin? Like, look at what just happened in a minute. How do we go about that? Ultimately, the Holy Spirit has this incredible plan. And I'm going to talk about that in 2 weeks on our next call. We're going to focus on the other way, the other thought system. But I just want to say, this is not your conventional path. It's not what you've seen before. It is a different way. And it isn't ever going to ask us to sort out the craziness of the ego thought system. It will ask us to forgive it and to de-identify with it, to detach from it, and to stop judging it. But it will not ask us to fix or solve it. It's not possible, right? It's not, that's the wrong. So the ego, it tells us that the real problem that we have is that we have this problem and this problem and this thing. That's not the real problem. And that's what we're starting to get at. That's not the real problem. The real problem is the ego itself. But it has us externally looking at all these other problems so that we don't see the real problem. We don't see it. Again, it's hidden. It's not exposed. So I'm so excited to join you tonight in this exposing part. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit more work around like exposing the ego and how it shows up. Okay, so I want you to participate. So we'll see what comes up. I'm not quite sure what the question is. So what's the question? What are the strategies that the ego uses to keep us in ego? Like, what does it do to keep us in ego? And like I'll start. I'm gonna just say something like judgment, right? Like the ego is all about judgment. And that's one of the ways it keeps us spinning with its thoughts. Okay, there's lots more though. So let's see what else we can come up with.
Being focused on the self, how I'm
Okay.
affected by things.
Yeah. So just kind of being self-centered, and I guess in on a level, yeah, that it's about you. Yeah, very much like separate. Like I'm the separate person, and I got to focus on myself. That's a good way to see it. There's a way to become self-focused with the course that is different than self-centered in a way, right? We still have to watch ourselves and be with ourselves, but it shows up differently. So yes.
Body identification.
Sure. Yes. The ego is it identifies us as people in bodies. And yes, its favorite thing to do is to judge bodies.
And
our own
compare.
and others. What's that?
Compare.
Comparison. Yes. Comparison is always of the ego. Comparison. That's a big one.
Competition.
Competition. Yes. Yes. There's a huge setup in the world with competition.
Fear of lack.
Yes. Yes. That goes good with the competition because we feel deeply that there's not enough. And so we're competing. We're competing often for like resources and attention and all of these things because we're in this perpetual kind of feeling of lack. Yeah, that's really good.
The need to do to be valued.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, who values doing over being? You know, do. That's how you'll be worthy if you keep going. Lots of hard work.
Victimhood.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's a good one. Victimhood and our victim stories, like the stories we write about that keeps us very stuck in ego for sure. Lots of evidence. Yeah.
Need to be right.
Yes. Yeah.
Blaming others.
Blaming. Yes.
Worrying about what other people think of you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Worrying about what other people think of you. And even like blanketing that is worrying. Worrying. That's like a very high strategy of the ego. Has us worrying.
And feeling guilty.
Guilt.
Guilt for anything, everything, any size, shape.
Sacrificing.
Yeah.
Being afraid,
What's that?
being afraid.
Being afraid. Yeah. Fear.
Sickness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sickness is also very separating. When we're sick, we feel alone. We feel different then. Yeah. Body
Overwhelm and anxiety.
overwhelm, anxiety. Yes. And that was a big one in terms of tracing the fear thoughts. And I realized my anxiety, it was really playing out for me as anxiety. That's how the feeling that was almost constant, as I had like an underlying anxiety. But I realized it was associated with the constant chaos going on in my mind. Yeah. Yes.
Problems to solve, a continual string of problems to solve, endless.
When one problem solved, the next one comes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Control.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
Trying to
Superiority.
fix other people.
Okay, one at a time. Go ahead, Sabina, first.
Trying to fix other people.
Yeah, I like that. What was the other one?
Superiority.
Oh, yeah. Don't forget inferiority. They're
Yeah.
both wonderful. They
Mhm.
both work wonderfully in terms of that. Yeah. Yeah. Superiority, inferiority.
Doubt.
Mm-hmm. Confusion, that goes along well with doubt too, and confusion. Yes.
Holding a grudge.
Grudges. Mm, yeah. And being
Hanging
very
on to the-
justified in that. Yes, go ahead, Julianne.
Yeah, hang on to the past, just.
Oh yeah, the past, hanging on. Yeah.
Getting sucked back into the old stories.
Or future.
Yeah.
Yeah, worrying about the future, fears about, it's often guilt from the past, worries from the future. An interesting one the course talks about is planning.
Mhm.
Who is planning so there's a couple of you that were planning your response, right? Planning, yeah. A healed mind does not plan. Well, that's a big one. Planning.
Willfulness, wanting to get our own way.
Mm-hmm.
Forgetfulness or mindlessness.
Sure. Yeah. Distraction's a good one, right? The distraction. Someone else was speaking to distraction. I think Colleen, just that's really common of the ego. It's just to really keep us out of our own clarity and awareness and centeredness. So yeah, that's good.
Anger.
Anger. Yes.
I've got this trick that the ego plays around, that it's just insurmountable. Paying attention to my thoughts, it's just too much work.
Yeah.
As if a chaotic mind is not a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. The doubt thoughts. The ego likes to heal us. It likes to get involved in this. It wants to get involved. It loves being examined, the course talks about, so it's like, just so you know, we're speaking about this because we're moving in the next couple of weeks. This has to be exposed and expressed because we're moving towards the correction. We're actually moving towards the healing, because we could spin in this. The ego would have a party. Yeah, talk about me when it's not done in right purpose. The ego loves being discussed. So that's another one. Analyzing. That's a really major ego strategy.
Yeah, having you believe there's a problem, it keeps you engaged. Like, if it makes you think you have a problem, then there's something that needs to be fixed. Something needs to be different than what it is. And then it just keeps you engaged with that. And then it gives you more problems and more problems. And it's all a distraction.
Yeah. So when there's a couple others that are coming to mind, but I just want to like kind of blanket it. So like even like expectations and assumptions that we make, those are also like the ego, you know, coming in with expectations and assumptions. But when we kind of come down to it, the ego is the thinking mind. It's the mind that's thinking, whether it's controlling it or it's analyzing it or it's making an assumption or it's judging. It's the thinking mind. I just want you to just reflect on that for a moment. Just reflect on that for a moment. It's even the one that intellectualizes something. They know that what if someone said being right? I'm right about that. Right? It's like the ego is the thought system that we've all been conditioned into in this world. It's the thought system our teachers taught us. It's the thought system our parents taught us. It's the thought system our religions taught us.
It's habitual.
It's very habitual. It's conditioned. It's our conditioning. Yes. And so when we start to become aware of it, we really notice the habitual nature of it. Like after a while of witnessing to the ego thoughts again and again, I realized, oh my gosh, the ego doesn't have that much material. Like it doesn't have, it's like, oh, it's hateful right now, or it's inferior. It can add in a lot of specific details, but it really doesn't have that great of a range. It's limited, to be honest. I mean, in that thinking space, we are in the closed mind. It's a closed system. And most of us haven't questioned it. You know, in fact, we're attached. We think we like our thoughts. We like the way we think about things. We like the way we judge upon things, our opinions of things. Right? Like there's a part that it says in the course, do not value what is valueless. And there comes this journey in the undoing of the ego where we have to be honest, like I value the way I think about things, or I value my point of view, or I value everything I know about a specific thing. Like it's humbling to the ego to come into our space tonight and to say, listen, to get ready for the class, I want you to basically forget what you know. I want you to empty your mind. Don't bring the past, don't bring your past experience, don't bring your spiritual ideas, just let it all go, and then we'll join. The ego has no understanding or interest in that, right? The ego wants to interfere, right? It wants to interfere. It wants to keep us distracted. So one of the things I say along the way, I love that we're all here together because we're here like in this process of healing the mind. And one of the things I say is like, we can come into a space like this and we're all like in our little squares and just being great spiritual students. Thank you all actually for like just sharing and participating. It's so awesome. It makes the group so fun. But the truth of it is that we can come in and we can be in a really painful state of mind. And we can be here pretending that we're okay. And we can be here judging everything that's going on. And we can be here feeling so separate and get off of this call and say, well, that was worthless to me. And I didn't get anything out of that. And I just want to say, like, there is sort of something different going on here because we're coming together with this like really deep shared purpose because we're tired from that. We're tired from coming into spaces and being the good spiritual student. And we're tired from coming into spaces and hiding and pretending that we've got it all together or that we understand when we don't. There's such a loving invitation in this space to kind of get real and to like expose the problem, which seems really personal to us, but really, if you take away nothing from this, I hope you know, like, you're just not alone in dealing with the contents of your mind. Like this, we really are on some level all called to see this, like to heal this. People are at different readiness points, and people are, it will look like different timing, but ultimately there's only one direction, and that is the undoing of fear. It's not our source. It's not true. It's not love. It's not us. So my request, like, I think it's so important, like everyone wants to jump to the healing too. Like, let's just talk about love. Let's just talk about love. But A Course in Miracles teaches, we're here to undo the blocks to love's presence. Okay, let's go over that. Undo the blocks to love's presence. Again, I'm going to say love is sure. It is sure. You can't lose it. You're safe in it. I can hold that faith. You can lean into my trust on that. But the blocks is what we have to show up for the healing. We have to show up with the willingness. We have to, because no one can go into your mind and change it for you. Like, I will tell you, love will never knock down the walls of your mind and demand that you change it. Love always waits with infinite patience for you to turn towards it and say, there's got to be another way. So that's next class. Like, it's literally called, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be another way. And the Course offers that. But to begin, because today is about exposing the ego, my invitation to you is to actually watch your mind over the next couple of weeks. This is a great time to start an expression journal where you just set a timer for 5 minutes and just scribble out every thought that seems to surface in the mind. If we don't start to pay attention to our state of mind, you're it. Again, no one can go into your mind and do the work that has to be done on that level. But when we come together, we say, I'm not doing this on my own. The ego wants you on your own. It doesn't want you to show up here. It's a miracle that you made it. You probably had a few hundred objections, all kinds of reasons why it wasn't going to work out, while you're too tired or whatever. That will dissipate over time as your commitment grows. But even it's miraculous to even get into these spaces, because the ego never guides us to these places. This is not the ego's doing. This is you being in touch with your inspired voice, with the voice of the Holy Spirit. Because this is the ego's undoing. So yes, there is a thought system of fear in the mind. It's not real. It doesn't have a foundation. But we infused our belief in it, and our minds are so powerful that it becomes real to us. And that's the experience we play out. We play out an experience of separateness, of guilt, of fear. And we're all so tired. The Course just says, like, the Course has come because we're weary from all of that. It's not who we are. So be kind to yourself in witnessing the mind. Be kind, to me, I became like a detective. I'm like, I want to see what's happening in there. Like, I want to see what's going on in my mind. I was shocked that I wasn't aware. And the hatefulness around it, the harshness to myself and towards others, all of it hidden, because to expose that would mean no one would love me, no one would like me or respect me. So I got to keep that hidden. That's the ego's plan. That's the other one. That's the strategy. Don't tell. Whatever you do, don't tell. So we're kind of doing something different here. I invite you to just connect in and show up when you're inspired and trust your journey. I know that, like, I just appreciate every one of you, all of the participation that happened tonight. I'm excited about these evenings because we're kind of just, yeah, we're meant to join and kind of get right into it in terms of starting to move towards the miracles. And I guess the last thing I want to say is this is about peace of mind. It is about peace of mind, but we have to remove the blocks to that experience, like to get to that experience. And most people on a spiritual path, you know, they just want it to be sweet and lovely. But this is a bit messy, to be honest, but it's very effective. That's been the experience of people in the Modern Miracles Academy and community and programs, is like there is an experience of greater peace, quiet in the mind, greater self-love, greater love towards others. Like that's authentic. That's truly authentic. So thank you.